for false allegations, debit card charges, and personal belongings.
Court come to order. All rise.
Have a seat, please.
Kevin.
Case 2131, Gutierrez versus George.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Miss Gutierrez, this is your mother.
Yes, ma'am.
And who is this?
My grandmother.
And that's your daughter?
Yes.
I'm reading the complaint and the answer, and this is what your complaint is about. You claim that your mother had you falsely arrested, as a result of which you spent 4 months in jail. While you were in jail, it is your claim that your mother used a debit card of yours, I think $3,000 worth, and you had some belongings at her house that you want. I gather that you've had some problems in your own life. You have at least 3 children.
Yes.
Was the state ever involved in placing the children in foster care?
No.
And what about your daughter?
My daughter, yes.
And how old is your daughter?
She's 19 months.
At what point did the state become involved with your daughter?
In May of this year, May 18th of this year, when there was false allegations made against, when my mom refused to give me my daughter back.
In May, when you brought your daughter to your mother's house, when?
I called my brother on May 17th of 2022, and I asked him to babysit my daughter.
Your brother. And does your brother live with your mother?
Yes, he was staying with her at that time.
So on the 17th, you asked your brother, who was staying with your mother, if he would babysit for your daughter. Where were you going?
I was needing to go to Fresno, and I had just received my income tax check. So I needed to go to Fresno, and I was on foot because my car was impounded the day prior.
Were you going alone?
To Fresno, yes.
So you brought your daughter on the 17th of May to your mother's house, and your brother was supposed to watch him, according to you, while you went to Fresno.
Yeah, he met me down the street, actually, because there's a restraining order. So I didn't actually go to the resident.
Who has a restraining order?
My mother has a restraining order on me.
Is the restraining order that she has against you a final order or a temporary order?
It's good for 3 years, that's all I know.
That's a final order. Was that a final order of protection after a trial, or did you consent to it?
I was not notified of the court date. Didn't consent to anything.
Okay, so it was a default.
I don't know what that means.
It means you didn't show up and they entered a final order of protection in favor of your mother. So you're not permitted to go to her home.
Right.
Since that's not really the subject of this, I don't have to get into it. In any event, you went on the 17th, you dropped your child off at your mother's house, your brother was there, and then what happened?
I finally got to Fresno, I got a ride, I got to the check cashing place. It literally took me...
Don't tell me, I'm not interested in that. 17th, you dropped the child off. You were supposed to pick the child up when?
That evening.
On the 17th?
Yes.
And did you?
I showed up it was a little before 10. I showed up, I called my brother, I said, I'm down the street. He was like, yeah, I'll be right there.
10 o'clock at night?
It was almost, ma'am, I was on foot. And
It's just a second. I asked you 10 o'clock at night.
it was right before 10, yes.
Okay.
When I got there, I called him. It had been about 15 minutes had gone by, and I called him back, and I said, where are you at? And he said, Mom won't let me leave with the baby. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, Mom won't let me leave with the baby. My mother instinct kicked in, and I went in like fight or flight, and I walked down to my mom's house, and I knocked on the door and was asking for my daughter. I finally came to my...
Okay, so when your brother said that to you, instead of going to the police, you violated the order of protection.
I ended up leaving and calling the sheriff.
Okay, but you didn't. You went...
Of course, yes. I was going for my daughter. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what happened at 10 o'clock at night or 10:30?
Yes. I finally realized that about 5 minutes of being at the house, I was like, okay, you need to leave. So I left because she wouldn't open the door to give me my daughter. I left. I called the sheriff. And so I told them the situation. So they had walked down to my mother's and let her know that what she was doing was basically...
No, not what she was doing. The police came
and told her
with
that they
you.
could arrest her. And told her that if she did not, that she needed to get my daughter back. But because it was late, the baby was already asleep. And so the cops that came back down to me, and they said, look, we don't, because they knew me.
Whatever. I'm allowing you to give me a certain amount of hearsay so that I can make this story make sense.
Oh, okay.
Do you understand? But don't tell me because they knew you, what they thought.
Yes, ma'am.
You were told to come back in the morning.
Yeah, the agreement was that between my mom and the sheriff was that I could pick up Malia in the morning. The sheriff told me to call before 6 o'clock in the morning before he got off his shift, and that he would come back out and do another standby. The next morning came. Between me and my grandma, I had to call my mom. And
No, just a second. What does that mean between you and your grandma? Your agreement was you were supposed to call the sheriff. The sheriff, according to you, before 6.
I called my grandma,
No, not the grandma. The agreement was you weren't supposed to call your grandma. You were supposed to call
Right,
the
but I needed a
sheriff.
ride. I needed a ride. So I called my grandma to have her come pick me up.
Just a second. Where were you?
I was staying at a friend's house. I didn't live in Selma.
Just a second. You were staying at what friend's house?
Kimberly smirks. Caption coming up.
The sheriff came, got behind us, and tried to like pin us in, and my grandma went to take off.
So your grandmother was driving.
Yes, ma'am.
And she was trying to evade the police to go someplace else.
A courthouse. The Judy Justice logo appears. In the courtroom, Kimberly and Rhonda.
Kimberly Gutierrez claims her mother, Rhonda George, owes for debit card charges and personal belongings.
You were staying at what friend's house?
My friend Isaiah's.
Isaiah.
Yes, I stayed the night there waiting for my daughter.
Just a second. Isaiah. Isaiah what?
Bonilla.
And what is your relationship with
He's my
him?
best friend. He's been my best friend since high school.
Where are you living now?
I live with my grandmother right now since I was released.
Full time?
Right now, yes.
What do you mean right now, yes?
I'm in the process of getting my own place.
Okay, so you called your grandmother and then,
Called the sheriff,
waited
for the sheriff to respond.
and then.
The sheriff did not respond for a few hours.
Okay, so you were waiting for the sheriff to respond. The sheriff did not respond until when?
It was after 7 o'clock in the morning, and it wasn't even yes, ma'am, 7 a.m.
7 a.m. Your daughter is, according to you, 19 months old? 19 months old. And she had prior to that been living with you.
She was living with me all the time, yes.
She was living with you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so now let's get back to this arrest that you had. According to your papers, your daughter was with you up until that time. What time did she wake up in the morning?
Usually she wakes up between 7:30 and 8 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, well, then could you tell me why, if she wakes up between 7:30 and 8, why you would even contemplate picking her up before 8 o'clock in the morning?
Because one of my issues was with certain officers that would have been responding, and the officer that responded the night of the incident, he told me, if you wanted me to be the officer to respond, you need to call me before I get off my shift.
Fine, but he didn't respond to you. But according to you,
no.
he didn't respond to you.
No, it was
so
a different
then my
officer.
question to you is,
They did respond at 7 o'clock in the morning.
And did what?
It was a horrible mess.
Well, he did what?
They responded. When they responded, he showed up. The officer told me that he did not want to be there. He said, if I have my way, you'll never see your daughter again. And I looked at him, and I said, wow, okay.
What do you mean you looked at him? Where were you when you looked at him?
I was right next to him, but I just...
Where, at the precinct or at your house?
No, down the street from my mom's.
Okay, so he responded to you when you were down the street at your mother's house, and he said, I'm not getting involved in this, and if I had my way, you would never have your daughter. And so what did you do?
So at that point, my grandma pulled up, and I told him, I said, your assistance is no longer needed, and that my grandma could just get my daughter. And he says, well, you already called me. The deputy did. So I said, okay, whatever. He asked me if I had somewhere to live, and I said yes, and whatever. And so he went down to my mom's. When he went down to my mom's, he was supposed to just go down there and get my daughter. When he was taking too long, I could walk so far this way, and I could see straight down my mom's street. So I did. When I did, I seen that my mom was out there just giving him an earful. I know this woman very well, okay? So I just imagined what was being said about me. Well, I guess the back door is screwed and nailed shut at the house. I don't know why.
I don't know. It's not important.
Yeah. So anyways, my best friend went over the back fence.
What do you mean your best friend?
Isaiah Bonilla.
Oh, so you brought Isaiah with you?
He went...
Just a second. So you have your grandmother, and then you've got Isaiah, your best friend, also to go to your mother's house.
Yes, ma'am. He got my daughter.
Isaiah brought her to where you were.
Yes.
And then what happened?
I started walking back towards Isaiah's house. When I started walking back towards Isaiah's house, my grandma pulled up in her car, and she was like, are you ready to go get your car out of the impound lot? And I said, yeah, I'm ready. And so I got in her back seat with my daughter. When I got in the back seat, I got in the middle. Well, then she was like, well, I don't know what's gonna happen. Your mom's over there saying a whole bunch of stuff to the deputies, so I don't know what's gonna happen. And so I was like, well, I gotta go get my stuff from Isaiah's. So I go to jump back out the car. As I go to jump back out the car.
But just a second. Now you have your daughter.
Because I needed my wallet. My bag was at Isaiah's. My purse and everything was at Isaiah's. I was gonna go back and pick it up. Well, right when we were gonna go back, the sheriff came, got behind us, and tried to like pin us in, and my grandma went to take off.
So your grandmother was driving.
Yes, ma'am.
And she was trying to evade the police to go someplace else.
Yes, ma'am.
And how many police cars were involved?
One.
Were there ever any more than one police car?
Once we got to the police department, of course, there's a police department.
No, I'm talking about the number of police cars. So there's a police car
Oh, like
now.
coming behind us? No. It was just one.
It was just one.
Yes, ma'am.
And you were accelerating
No.
to get there? Was the police car siren on?
No.
Well, how did you know that he was trying to pull you over?
Because he tried to hit her car.
Oh, that would give you a clue. So you're telling me he tried to hit your grandmother's car without notifying you in any way to pull over?
Yes, ma'am. That's why I spent 4 months in
Just-
jail, and I beat my case. I went to trial and beat my case. Everything was dismissed.
I'm not responsible for the criminal justice system. I'm only responsible for what goes on here.
Yes, ma'am.
So I assume once you got to the police station, both you and your grandmother were arrested.
Yes, ma'am.
And that was in May.
Yes, ma'am.
And now we're, uncross your arms. And now we're in December
Yes, ma'am.
of the same year.
Yes, ma'am.
And you're out of jail.
Yes, ma'am.
And you've been out of jail for about,
Since August 25th.
who does your daughter live with?
Right now, she's with a mentor. She's my ex-husband's aunt, ma'am.
And who placed her with your ex-husband's aunt?
I did.
Not the court.
No, I requested her.
Does the child's great aunt have guardianship?
No,
Custody?
I'm getting my daughter back, ma'am.
But for the last 3 months, she's been with this aunt.
Right, because Child Protective Services did get involved, and Child Protective Services, I've been doing everything that...
That's what I asked you. I asked you whether Child Protective Services
Child
were
Protective
involved.
Services did get involved with my daughter, yes.
Did. That's what I assumed.
And I've been drug testing, I've been
Just
doing...
a second.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what I assumed, that Child Protective Services was involved. And so if Child Protective Services are involved, then they are overseeing the child's placement with the aunt. You have an ongoing case.
Yes,
with
ma'am.
Probate court.
No, not probate.
Which one? Family court?
Family court, yes.
When was the case opened with regard to your daughter in the family
May
court?
18th, the day I got arrested, ma'am.
And that child became involved with the foster care system in May. Okay, so your grandmother also spent a little time in jail. How much?
2 weeks.
I quite frankly don't understand your case.
While I was in jail, Your Honor, while I was incarcerated, my mom had all my debit cards, my ID. She had went and actually, because of me getting arrested, she had went to Isaiah's and picked up all of my stuff.
You mean, just a second. Let me understand this. It is your claim that the reason that you had to go to Isaiah's house was to get your pocketbook, your wallet, your credit card that you left there.
But I never made it there.
I understand that. And Isaiah, clearly, from what you tell me, knew of the problem because he was part of this little conspiracy to get your daughter out of the house and was at the back of the house to pick up your daughter who was being put over the fence. So why would Isaiah give your mother...
Because she went over there with a baseball bat and busted out his windows.
Caption coming up.
On February 4th this year, I had...
Kimberly's eyes fill with tears.
I lost my twin, okay? And that was the first time I had contacted my mother because I was going through it and I messaged her and I told her, I said, I really need my mom right now. If anything, I need my mom right now.
A wide-eyed Rhonda shakes her head. A courthouse. The Judy Justice logo appears. In the courtroom, Kimberly and Rhonda.
Kimberly Gutierrez is accusing her mother, Rhonda George, of wrongfully using her debit card and keeping her belongings.
So why would Isaiah give your mother...
Because she went over there with a baseball bat and busted out his windows. And the reason why all of my things were at my mother's was because I hadn't lived at my mom's for over a year.
What your case is about...
Is my belongings.
You claim that your mother went over and got your wallet from Isaiah's, because I asked you what you were doing here. I certainly am not looking into the allegations of false arrest. It sounds as if you did the absolute wrong thing in trying to regain your daughter, whose custody, actually, you lost at a dispositional hearing and was determined to be a dependent child and placed in foster care. That's what happened here.
Right.
Okay, so I'm not even addressing your claims of false arrest.
Okay,
what you did was actually the wrong thing. I said, so what are you suing for? Now,
My
you said
my belongings,
okay.
my
What?
money.
Just a second. What money?
She used my CalFresh, which is my EBT food stamps, and my CalWorks, which is my cash aid through the welfare department.
Just a second. So you're suing her for taking your food stamps and your welfare check?
Right.
Just a second. your food stamps and your welfare check.
And this is the statement from my tax return of all the money that was on there.
On where?
On my debit card. It had over $3,000 on it, and I marked what was used after she had picked it up. And then these are receipts from some of my belongings that was at her house.
Just a second. You haven't lived in your mother's house?
I moved back to my mother's in the
Just
beginning.
a second.
Yes, ma'am.
You hadn't lived in your mother's house, according to what you said to me. Whitney, was it a year ago? Didn't you say that you moved out of
My
your
mom
mother?
allowed me to come back.
Because there was an order of protection.
She had called me. I was living in Fresno, ma'am.
Just a second. You hadn't lived in your mother's house. You said you were living with your grandmother. For how long were you living with your grandmother before May?
I said I was living with my grandmother right now. I was living in Fresno, ma'am.
I want to know what property you think...
My clothing, my husband's clothing, my daughter's bassinet. I had jewelry there. I had all of my clothing.
Why would all of your clothing be there? You were living with your grandmother.
I hadn't moved into my grandmother's until I got out of jail. I was living in Fresno. And my mom...
Just a second.
You're not letting me talk.
I'm not understanding your movements.
Okay, my mom kicked me out in 2021, okay? My daughter was just a few weeks old. My mom kicked me out due to her boyfriend.
She kicked you out.
Yes.
And?
When she kicked me out, I went through Marjorie Mason, and Marjorie Mason had placed me in hotels. I was placed in hotels for about 3 or 4 months, okay? And then it was about January of 21. I was at this time, I was pregnant with twins. They had genetic defects. On February 4th this year, I lost my twins, okay? And that was the first time I had contacted my mother because I was going through it, and I messaged her and I told her, I said, I really need my mom right now. If anything, I need my mom right now. My daughter had not seen my daughter. She was not a part of my daughter's life. I did not speak to my mother, nothing. So she made an agreement that she would watch my daughter, because I had to go to San Francisco because I was too far along in my pregnancy, and it was just a big old mess.
Do you have any of your daughter's property?
No.
Okay, now, let's talk about this card. Did you pick up her property from Isaiah? That's either a yes or a no, after the 18th of May.
Well, how do I answer that when I did pick up her property, but her cards were not in there? Her driver's license wasn't in there. Her food stamp card wasn't in there.
What were you doing at Isaiah's?
So she asked...
Was this when she was in jail?
Yes, right after she got arrested. So I went down there. No problem, he handed it right to me. Look in my wallet, make sure everything's in there. Like I said, I don't know if it was her driver's license or ID was missing, her food stamp card, and the other card, the bank card. I don't know how to get proof, but her best friend, he cashed out everybody money. There was a bunch of people, even himself.
The information right here.
Even himself and his girlfriend. I don't want to get into the whole...
I don't want to get into it either. It's far too complicated for me. Is what you're telling me that you never used a card that she had?
No, I did not.
Because I'm not concerned about food stamps or welfare.
I did not.
You're suing the wrong person. You were in jail, so you didn't need money from welfare. What proof do you have that
I have my bank statements.
What proof do you have that your mother withdrew money?
She was the one that went and picked up my cards.
Oh, I don't know that. That's not what she says, and you have no proof. Isaiah's not here, correct?
No.
I don't doubt you when you say that somebody used your card. I just need proof
My
to
mother,
show.
I know that she was supposed to get my daughter from CPS. She was supposed to go get a crib with my card, and I have the where she, and my grandma can.
I just want you to show me.
Ma'am.
No. That your mother. I believe that people used your card.
She used my card.
No, I don't know that. I need you to show me proof that your mother.
How am I supposed to show? I have my bank statements.
Then I'll take a look at your bank statement. If your bank statement tells me who used your card, then that's an easy. She said she did not. I just want you to show me proof that any of these were used. I mean, we have a lot of PlayStations, DoorDash, Amazon Marketplace.
And
all
I was
of those.
locked up throughout that whole time.
I understand that. I suggest that you concentrate on getting yourself together. If you want to reunite your family, I suggest that you put your priorities in order.
Oh, they are in order.
Evidently not.
I work, I have a job, I go to school, I'm getting my own place, but I'm going to court, I'm getting my kids back.
Good.
Can I give you this?
I don't know what it is.
Well, I just want you to look at it.
What can I say?
Rhonda hands a document to Kevin, who brings it to Judy. She reviews it.
You're telling me this is part of your daughter's criminal history? What is this?
No, I'm just showing you she just got out of jail just a couple of days ago.
They haven't picked up charges, Your Honor.
You were arrested on November 28th?
Yes.
I'm not going to let you tell me about this. You have a lawyer?
Yes.
As I said, Ms. Gutierrez, if you're trying to work to get your family back together,
Yes, ma'am.
and your kids back together,
Yes, ma'am.
it would be a good idea to think about having more children until you get these children back under your roof. We're done here. Your case is dismissed.
You have a good day.
This court is adjourned.
Outside the courtroom, Rhonda,